Schneider Electric is proud to bring this podcast to you. Schneider's mission is to be the customer's digital partner for sustainability and efficiency, and bringing insights such as you are about to hear helps further that mission.
My name is Jo Taranto and I'm joined today by Daniel Lambert, Executive Manager for Sustainable Infrastructure Solutions at Unity Water, and we're talking about net zero and Unity Water's sustainability goals, including an oyster reef restoration trial. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, Jo.
Daniel, tell us about Unity Water. I've heard you boast that you're in maybe the best part of Australia.
I think we are. I'm a bit biased, but we are a water utility that services the Noosa, Sunshine Coast and Moreton Bay region in southeast Queensland. So beautiful part of the world to live and work.
It is actually pretty great. I think you're right. Tell us about Unity Water's commitment to sustainability.
So Unity Water's got a commitment to sustainability in terms of our net zero carbon goals, but also one of the things that makes Unity Water a bit unique is our goals around net zero nutrients into waterways. And we were the first water utility in Australia to make that commitment, and we're now starting to see some other utilities do it as well, but really exciting and drive some real innovation in our organisation.
It's certainly not something that we've heard huge amounts about, so it is exciting to hear. Can you tell us how Unity Water came to establish this goal?
A great question. I think for us, we're in a really, we talked about it being a beautiful part of the world to live, but it's also a very environmentally special place where Unity Water is based. So Noosa and the Sunshine Coast have both been declared by UNESCO as international sites of excellence, and that's due to the beauty and the biodiversity, etc., in those areas. So we really feel like we have an obligation to our community and to the environment to care for it and have a positive impact. And
nutrients enter the waterways from wastewater treatment. Is that primarily what your concern is around?
It is. We have 17 wastewater treatment plants across our region, and when we treat wastewater, one of the things we do is remove a lot of the nitrogen and phosphorus from the wastewater before it's discharged back into the waterways. And there's levels that regulators set for us to be compliant, but we've decided to go beyond that to that net zero target. And one way to do that is obviously to treat wastewater, but we've also worked really closely with the regulator to develop a nutrient offsetting process and approach to how we manage nutrients.
And so you've obviously had to come up with some key projects that help you do that. What does that look like?
Yes, so when we talk about nutrient offsetting, fundamentally how it works is within the catchment where our treatment plant is, we can do other projects that improve and reduce the amount of nutrients going into waterways. So that's led us to consider a number of different types of projects. And an example is Wamuran Irrigation Scheme. We're doing a recycled water project, which basically takes the equivalent of over 1,000 Olympic swimming pools per year of water that would normally be discharged into the waterways and have a level of nitrogen and phosphorus in it, and diverts it to recycled water for farmers, turf farmers, food and agriculture farming in the region. So that's a really exciting one. We're also doing a lot of really interesting work around the Caboolture River, restoring the banks of the river, so that removes sediment being washed into the river and releasing nutrients. So there's a couple of examples of some of those nutrient offsetting projects which deliver really great outcomes at a more economical cost, but also help the community be able to enjoy their environment more.
Is it hard to measure and also, track how productive those projects are at achieving those goals, or is it something you do anyway?
It's a great question, and I think typically water utilities have a very good understanding of what the nitrogen levels from the discharge from their treatment plants are. But when we do these nutrient offsetting projects, we need to do sampling so we can understand the level of nutrient reduction from those projects. So we do need to test and understand, and often we do trials of projects to understand how worthwhile they are.
And are there any downsides to pulling, the nutrients out to a point that you're, net zero as such?
No, I think there's healthy levels of nutrients in a waterway, but the work that we're doing is obviously cognizant of what the best outcome is for those waterways, and so there's not a negative impact. In fact, it's having a really positive impact, and we want the waterways to really be able to deliver on the biodiversity and the beauty that people enjoy in our region.
You're listening to the Australian Water Association podcast series, and I'm speaking with Daniel Lambert from Unity Water. One of the projects that's attracting a lot of attention is the Oyster Reef Restoration Project in Moreton Bay. Can you tell us about what makes it so significant and what really makes it a first?
Yes, so normally when we think about oysters, we think about food, and I, like many people, love seafood, but this particular project is a trial that we're doing 10 kilometres up the Pine River in Moreton Bay, so 10 kilometres from the coastline, where we're creating oyster reefs. So we're using robust oyster baskets, which will have shellfish reefs form in them, to absorb nutrients from the waterways. So one of the things oysters do really well is absorb nutrients. So the intent is to look at processes and approaches that First Nations people, for example, have used to clean up waterways in our region in the past, learn from those practices, and then apply them in a context of how can we use natural systems and processes to remove nutrients.
Daniel, can you tell me how the oyster reefs are formed when you start this project?
Yes, so we use what we call robust oyster baskets, but within those baskets, we actually reuse recycled oyster shells from the hospitality industry. So it's a great way of reducing waste, thinking from a circular economy type approach of taking products and using them again. But those recycled oyster shells make the surface on which the oysters attach and then grow.
It really is circular. Amazing. And it obviously doesn't happen on its own. You've been working on this project in partnership with the university, but also other organisations. What has that enabled you to do?
Yes, so it's a 5-year trial, and our partners include the University of Sunshine Coast, so they're obviously bringing a lot of value in terms of their research, Ozfish, our charity, and the Healthy Land and Water. So that partnership is enabling us to carry out the project, undertake monitoring, and obviously I mentioned the First Nations as well, First Nations people, so we're working with the Cubby Cubby in that context. But that partnership's enabling us to do the research, do the testing, and also we're engaging heavily with the regulators to understand and ensure they're on board with the trial, the measurement of the impacts, and therefore have the ability to approve it as a new way of treating nutrients in waterways.
Are there a lot of barriers to get a project like this off the ground?
There are. I think often, it's always exciting trying something new, but it's also there's not proven processes or pathways in terms of regulation and approvals. So in a lot of ways, we are pioneering a new approach. And I think there's a lot of goodwill in the industry about it, but it has been slower than an established approach with approvals, etc. So, yeah, we've been working closely with others to try and streamline that.
You mentioned it's a 5-year trial. If it goes well, Dan, do you think there'll be lots of opportunities to continue this work in other areas of the catchment?
I think there's a lot of opportunities for Unity Water and for other utilities around Australia and globally. And we think there's a strong likelihood that this will deliver a really economical way of removing nutrients. And when we remove nutrients from wastewater, to do it to a certain level can be done at a reasonable cost, and then it becomes quite expensive to remove that last portion of nutrients. So some of these offsetting projects really help to deliver great value for customers in terms of cost, great value for communities in terms of the amenity of their waterways, and they're also self-perpetuating. So with these oyster reefs, once they're established, they're sustained by natural oyster spat establishment. So what that means is the oyster larvae attaches to a surface and continues to self-propagate, basically. So we're not looking at something that's highly intensive in terms of operating costs or long-term impact. And our waterways right throughout Australia, there's opportunities. And probably the last point I would make is this isn't. There's some trials around the coastline for oysters, but the fact that this trial's 10 kilometres inland in an estuarine environment also means that we'll be able to demonstrate that this type of model can be used in inland waterways as well.
It's certainly an exciting project, Daniel. Has it put you off eating oysters?
It hasn't. It does make me think about it from time to time in terms of the fact that oysters do absorb a lot of nutrients, and that said, I still love eating them, and the ones that we're using here won't be used for food production, that's for sure.
Well, not only are you in the best part of the world, you've got some amazing bivalves doing some hard work for you. It sounds like a pretty great job. Thanks so much. I've been speaking with Daniel Lambert, Executive Manager, Sustainable Infrastructure Solutions at Unity Water. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Joe.